Imagine you're standing on the deck of a Viking longship. There is no GPS, no compass, no map you can unfold and check. And then, the fog rolls in. The coastline disappears. The sun vanishes. Everywhere you look, there is nothing but gray sky and dark water stretching to the horizon. You have no idea where you are. And yet, somewhere beyond that fog is Iceland. And somehow, the Viking captain has to find it. Because if he gets it wrong, there may be no second chance. So, how did Vikings cross thousands of kilometers of open ocean without the navigation technology we consider essential today? The answer is much stranger than simply they followed the sun. Because these sailors were using something far more sophisticated than a compass. They were reading the sky, the ocean, the wind, the wildlife, and even tiny changes in light that most of us would completely ignore. And once you understand how they did it, the Viking Age starts to look very different. Picture a Viking ship leaving Scandinavia. The long wooden hull rises and falls with the waves. The sail snaps in the wind. Behind the ship, the coastline slowly disappears. For us, that moment would be terrifying. For an experienced Viking navigator, it was the beginning of a calculation. The first clue was the sun. The Vikings obviously knew where the sun rose and where it set, but they could use much more than that. Throughout the day, the sun's position changed in a predictable pattern. A navigator could estimate direction by watching where it appeared in the sky and remembering how that position changed as the hours passed. There was even a device, sometimes called a Viking sun compass, or sun shadow board, which may have helped sailors estimate direction from the shadow cast by a central object. But here's where things get interesting. What happens when the sun disappears? Because the North Atlantic doesn't exactly have a reputation for perfect weather. This is where Viking navigation becomes almost unbelievable. Old Norse sources describe something called a sunstone. For centuries, historians debated what this actually meant, but certain transparent crystals, such as Iceland's spar, have a remarkable optical property called birefringence. In simple terms, they can help reveal the direction of polarized light. And sunlight becomes polarized as it scatters through the atmosphere. That means, under certain conditions, a person can use such a crystal to determine where the hidden sun is, even when clouds are blocking it. Imagine holding a small piece of crystal toward a completely gray sky. You can't see the sun, but the crystal can produce different brightness depending on how you rotate it. Suddenly, the invisible sun leaves a clue. Now, we need to be careful here. There is evidence that sunstones were known in the Viking world, and experiments show that crystals such as Iceland's spar can work for this purpose. But historians still debate exactly how, or even whether, Viking sailors routinely used them for navigation. So the Sunstone isn't a magical Viking GPS. It is one fascinating possibility in a much larger navigation system. And that system depended on something else: memory. A Viking navigator didn't simply know Iceland is west. He needed to know what the journey should feel like, how long the voyage usually took, which direction the prevailing winds tended to come from, what kinds of waves appeared along the route, where birds were likely to be found, and what the coastline should look like when land finally appeared. Think about that. Today, if your phone dies, you might panic because you don't know where you are. A Viking navigator had no phone to begin with. His brain was the navigation device, and the ocean itself was part of the map. Experienced sailors could pay attention to wave patterns and wind direction. They could estimate how far they had traveled by combining speed, direction, and time. They didn't have a modern speedometer, but they could still develop a practical sense of how quickly their ship moved under different conditions. And then there were the animals. Birds could provide clues about nearby land. A sailor seeing certain seabirds might know that land was not impossibly far away. Whales could also reveal information about the waters they were traveling through. And sometimes the simplest clue was the most important one of all: land. Viking explorers didn't always sail blindly across the ocean. Their journeys could involve coastal navigation, island hopping, and routes that were learned and remembered over generations. Imagine a sailor who has made the journey before. He knows that after leaving Norway, certain islands should appear. He knows roughly what direction Iceland lies in. He knows what the waves feel like when the ship approaches shallow water. He knows what birds should be flying overhead, and he knows what the coastline should look like. To us, these might seem like disconnected observations. To him, they were coordinates. But here's where things get weird. What if the Vikings weren't simply following landmarks? What if they were using the entire environment as one enormous navigation instrument? The wind tells them one thing. The waves tell them another. The sun gives them direction. The stars provide a nighttime reference. Birds reveal information about land. And their own memory tells them whether all of those clues make sense together. It's less like using a compass and more like solving a puzzle while standing on a moving ship. And there was one celestial object that was especially useful: the North Star. At night, Polaris appears close to the North Celestial Pole, making it an excellent reference point for determining north in the Northern Hemisphere. The Vikings didn't need a modern star chart to understand this. They simply needed to recognize the sky. And imagine what that sky looked like in the Viking Age. No city lights, no skyscrapers, no aircraft, no glowing screens. Just darkness. On a clear night, the stars would have been an enormous, unmistakable part of the world around them. A sailor who spent years at sea could become incredibly familiar with their patterns. But knowing north isn't enough. You also need to know where you're going. And that's where experience became everything. A voyage across the North Atlantic wasn't just a line drawn on a map. It was a mental landscape. A sailor might remember that certain winds usually accompanied certain routes. He might recognize changes in the sea. He might notice the color of the water. He might recognize a familiar cloud formation above distant land. And then there was timing. If you know approximately how fast you're traveling and how long you've been traveling, you can estimate distance. This method, known broadly as dead reckoning, has been used by sailors for centuries. Of course, it wasn't perfect. A ship could be pushed sideways by currents. The wind could change. A storm could force the crew off course. And that's the terrifying part. The Vikings weren't navigating with perfect information. They were constantly correcting mistakes. That means the real skill wasn't knowing exactly where you were. It was knowing when your observations stopped making sense. If the wind felt wrong, pay attention. If the stars didn't match the expected direction, reconsider. If the waves looked unfamiliar, something had changed. If the coastline appeared too early or too late, the route might need to be adjusted. This is where Viking navigation becomes less mysterious. It wasn't one secret technology. It was a system. A combination of astronomy, environmental observation, memory, experience, and constant correction. And that system was good enough to help Norse sailors travel across some of the most difficult waters on Earth. They reached Iceland. They reached Greenland. And Norse explorers eventually reached North America centuries before Columbus. But don't imagine these voyages as easy. The North Atlantic could be brutal. Huge waves, freezing temperatures, violent storms, limited visibility, and wooden ships that depended completely on the weather. A modern traveler can look at a map and see exactly how far Iceland is from Norway. A Viking sailor saw an endless horizon and still sailed into it. That's perhaps the most fascinating part of the story. The Vikings didn't conquer the ocean because they somehow eliminated uncertainty. They learned to live with it. They transformed tiny environmental clues into information. A shadow became a direction. A star became a reference point. A bird became a warning. A wave became a clue. A familiar wind became a memory. And a crystal, perhaps, could reveal the hidden position of the sun. None of these things could guarantee success. Together, however, they created something incredibly powerful: a mental hallmark. So the next time you look at your phone and watch that little blue dot tell you exactly where you are, imagine what it would feel like to throw the phone into the ocean and sail thousands of kilometers without it. No satellite, no digital map, no glowing arrow telling you which way to turn. Just the sky above you, the water beneath you, and everything you've learned to notice. Because the Vikings didn't need to make the ocean predictable. They became exceptionally good at reading its unpredictability. And maybe that's the real lesson. Navigation was never just about knowing where you are. It's about noticing enough clues to figure out where you must be. If you enjoyed exploring this mystery, subscribe to the Primal Logic for more fascinating stories about humans, nature, science, and the hidden reasons behind the world around us.